Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we're taking a look at the Firebrand Dragonknight build. This build can be used in solo play, small group play, and in trials if your trials group will allow it. You might have to switch to a fire staff on both bars, but that's really up to your group dynamic and stuff, and really up to the person playing it. Now this build can work with both two-handed and fire staff if you want to, but I find using two-handed on both bars works out really well with the way it's designed to work. It's an up-close fire damage build, but it also uses a lot of physical damage to kind of enhance the playability. It's a hybrid build, so it works out really well. A lot of people might question it a little, but you know what? It works really, really good. I've play tested this off and on for almost a year now, really kind of focusing on trying to get it fine-tuned and making sure that everything with it works as intended. So let's go ahead and get into the build, starting with the character screen. So as you can see, we are a Firebrand DK. We are a Dark Elf. Dark Elf is probably the best race for this, and I say that because of the fact that they get both magic and stamina, and they get increased weapon and spell damage, so it kind of plays really well into the dynamics of the build. Now this is also a light armor build. It is not a medium, it is not a heavy, it is a light armor build, and as you can see, our stats aren't too bad. Our magic is coming in at 27,000, max stam's coming in at 27,000. We have 1,051 mag recovery. You need that really high mag recovery. You have a decent stam recovery. You're not really playing into the stamina side, but you do have a okay stam recovery. You're not going to be using a lot of stamina, trust me. Spell damage is coming in at 1958. Weapon damage is at 2306, and then we have a 52% spell crit and a 40% or 48%, almost 50% weapon crit. Spell resist is 15,399, and physical resistance is 13,534. And that is perfect for this build to be used either in solo play or in group play. Alright, moving on. We do have Major Prophecy and Savagery at all times, increasing both spell and critical resist by 10%. And we have the Thief, Mundus Stone, increasing again our spell and physical, or our weapon and spell crit by even more. And then, of course, we also have Tri-Stat Food. This gives you max stats in max health, magic, and stamina. Why it's only showing 0 here, I don't know. Something with the PTS, I guess. Moving on to equipment now. Food-wise, you're going to want to use Tri-Stat Food. It's going to be the best option for this because you want that higher max health, magic, and stamina. So you want to play on all three pools really well, and you really want that good amount of resources for making your stuff hit as hard as possible. Alright, moving on to the potions, we are using Tripods. Tripods are really good for this build because it gives you health, magicka, and stamina. You're mostly going to be using magicka 90% of the time. Your stamina shouldn't drop too much because you're not going to be focused so much on using stamina-based abilities. You're actually only using one. The rest are all magicka-based, so... Alright, now moving on to the sets. Starting with our monster set, we are using Grothars. Grothars is an excellent set for any magicka fire DPS up-close build because the way it works. So whenever you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create lava pools that swirl around you that deal flame damage to all enemies within 8 meters of you every second for 5 seconds, and this effect can occur every 10 seconds. It will pretty much be going off non-stop. So this monster set will activate all the time because you have so much damage over time going on that it just constantly keeps it procced. And then on top of that, it does that extra fire damage, which really plays on the way this build plays. So the next set, and this is going to be a question set. A lot of people are going to ask me why I chose this set, and that is Night Mother's Gaze. Night Mother's Gaze is a really good set for anyone playing a stamina DPS character in light armor that wants that extra physical pin for 6 seconds. And it's anytime you deal critical damage, you apply Major Fracture. So here's the deal. You will always be dealing critical damage with this build. So this will never wear off. You will always be getting Major Fracture for you and your allies. So this works out really well, and it keeps it applied to multiple targets. It doesn't apply to just one, it applies to all targets that you critically hit. So this is a really good set for those stamina DPS to get Fracture applied to multiple targets. It helps you burn things down really fast in group play and in solo play. Next up, we do have the Burning Spellweave set. Now, Burning Spellweave is a set that a lot of people will question, again. And let me go over the stats on this, sorry. So, 2-piece weapon crit, 3-piece weapon damage, 4-piece weapon crit again, and then the 5-piece, when you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resist by 5,280 for 6 seconds. And then, Burning Spellweave. This set is really good on a Fire DK. And there's reasons for that. 1, 2-piece adds max magicka, 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece spell crit, and then the 5-piece. When you deal damage with a flame damage ability, you have a 15% chance to apply burning status effect to the enemy that increases your spell damage by 525 for 8 seconds. This effect can occur every 12 seconds. So just like Grothdar, this one can trigger every 12 seconds, but Grotdar's 10. So you have like a 4-second in between where you won't be getting a 525, but it doesn't matter. This set still works super, super good for this. Because anytime you deal flame damage, you apply the burning status effect. That adds more damage to your character overall when it comes to fire. Going on to the weapons now, I'm just going to go over the weapon enchants just so you guys know and their traits. And then I'll do the traits on the gear and the jewelry. So the weapons we're using is Burning Spellweave Greatsword. Infused with a flame damage enchant. This is going to give you increased fire damage. With this, every light attack you do is going to give you fire, like not every light attack, but a lot of fire damage coming out of this from light attacking. And you will be light attack weaving a lot, but not all the time. It's kind of an interesting build because you will be doing heavy attacks as well because of one of your buffs. So it really plays really good into this, and that fire damage, again, is really good, that flame damage. Moving on to the back weapon, we are using an infused weapon damage enchant, and this increases weapon and spell damage by 452 for 5 seconds, and this will be up pretty much all the time. You'll have this up consistently with the way you do the rotation on this build. Like I said, this is an up-close build. This isn't one that stands back and fights. This is one that gets right up in the face of the enemy and stands there and deals damage while being able to absorb a lot of damage. So, and you'll see what I mean when I show you the build in action. So that's the traits and enchants of the weapons. On to the gear now. The monster set, we do have Divine's Helm, Light Armor, Tri-Stat. The Tri-Stats help you maximize both magic and stamina, plus giving you some health. And then we do have on the shoulders and the belt, and I do want to point this out. The shoulders are Divine's Max Magicka. The belt are Divine's Max Magicka, both light armor. This is, like I said, a light armor build. The only heavy and medium pieces we have are the chest and legs. The chest is going to be reinforced. The reason you're going for the reinforced is to increase that armor value, to give you that greater survivability. You can go Divines here if you're playing in group, but I prefer reinforced for just that little bit of extra survivability in the build. We have medium legs, Tri-Stat Divines. This is going to give you, again, those extra stats. And you're going to want Tri-Stats on the big pieces. This is going to help maximize health, stamina, and magicka. But it's going to allow you to spread those attributes really well across the spectrum. On the boots and the gloves, we are running Divine's Max Stamina. Now, people are going to ask why the max stamina here. It's to maximize, again, your stamina pool. The whole thing about this build is maximizing your resources to maximize your damage potential with fire damage and physical damage, because you're doing both at the same time. You're trying to focus on this idea that this is a melee based fire damage build. So you really want to have a good mix of attributes, and you want them to be almost equal in a sense. You don't need them to be, but it works out better when they're closer together like this, because it does improve your DPS. Alright, so now that I've shown you guys the traits and enchants there, we're going to go over the traits and enchants on the jewelry. Jewelry is optional here. When it comes to the enchants, you don't have to have these enchants on them. or sorry, traits on them, but the enchants are definitely what makes them work out really well. So the first two are Trirune weapon damage enchants. Trirune, as you can see, 435 Magicka stamina and then 478 health. It's almost the equivalent of a Tri-stat. So having 2 Trirune rings allows you to maximize, again, your stamina, your health, your Magicka, all that stuff, so you have that those good resources. The necklace, on the other hand, we have infused with mag recovery. The reason for the infused is it increases the jewelry enhancement effectiveness by 60%. So it gives you that higher mag recovery that allows you to manage it better. So you have that higher Magicka recovery. In the end, you have about a 1200 mag recovery because you will be activating the potion like right out the door. The reason for that, you want that higher mag recovery. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what the weapon and spell damage looks like fully buffed from this build. So we have our buff there. That increases both weapon and spell damage. We're going to do our weapon attack here. We're also going to do our burning spell weave. And just to get things going a little bit better, we're going to go ahead and buff everything. And you can see here, we go to about a 3,000 something spell damage, 3,000 weapon damage. Now, if you're in a group and you have like all the different buffs that you can get and everything, you almost have 4,000 weapon and spell damage on this build with a 52% spell critical and a 48% weapon critical. That makes this work out really, really well. And also here we have 22 in the Magicka, 42 in the stamina. This is to maximize, again, our resource pools. And it only works this way on a DK. Any other race, Khajiits, you could probably do the same spread on, the 42, 22. But DKs, because of their racial benefits of the 2k stamina and Magicka, you really kind of want to balance it out so you get that 27k. Other races can play this way. I did try this with a Argonian. Argonian is great for this because of the potion management. The Breton is also another really good one to play, and even High Elf is really good to play with this because you get that higher spell damage. You're not so much focused on the weapon damage as much as you want that higher spell damage. And that's, again, why we build for so much of one, but not the other. If you guys notice, we do put a lot of weapon damage into the build, but then when you look at the spell damage, we get 1 spell damage from our set, and then we get that extra spell damage from the burning spell weave. So we actually get quite a bit. And then we have a buff that does really well in there as well. So going on to the skills now, and we're just going to go over the skills we have on the bar. I'm not going to go over all the class skills and why I have all the class skills unlocked or anything like that. I'll explain that when we get done with the skills. So, starting with the first skill we have on our bar, we have Molten Whip. Now, Molten Whip is actually a really powerful ability. Lash an enemy dealing X amount of flame damage, and then if you hit an enemy that is immobile or stunned, you set them off balance. And then while slotted, when you activate a different Ardent Flame ability, you gain a stack of Scorching Fury, which increases the damage of your next Molten Whip by 33% and weapon and spell damage by 75 for 5 seconds. This effect can stack up to 3 times. This is where you're going to get extra weapon and spell damage, which is really good because the way the rotation works on this, which I'll show you guys here in a minute, works out really well. Next, we have Brawler. Now, Brawler, a lot of people are going to say, why Brawler? Brawler's here because it does physical damage, it does a decent amount, but it also gives you a damage shield. And each enemy hit increases the strength of that shield by 50% up to 300. So you can actually get a massive shield off of this when you hit multiple targets with your Brawler. Brawler, not only will it hit multiple targets and get that buff on you, the shield, but it'll also apply Major Fracture if you crit hit with it. So this is another place that you want this ability to critically hit to get Fracture put on multiple targets. Next up, we have Burning Embers. Now, Burning Embers is a really great ability. It does damage up front, it does damage over 14 seconds, and then it also heals you for 80% of the total damage inflicted when the effect ends. And you can apply this, which is really cool. Like, I can go up and I can apply this, right? And I can let it wait and do this stuff, and then I can hit it again, and I will heal myself. So I can actually use this ability multiple times within a few seconds and just keep myself fully healed without taking a lot of damage. So that's our primary heal with this. But we also have the next ability, which is our Dampen Magic. Dampen Magic gives you a shield that absorbs 9,715 damage for 6 seconds. Damage shield strength is capped at 60% of your max health, and each piece of light armor worn increases the amount of damage absorbed by 6%. Now, we have this maxed out. We can't get it any higher than this. Because of the way we have our CP spent, we actually get a bigger shield than we should, but it's enough that it gives us almost half of our health in a shield, which is great. Along with the Brawler, we get another, 4K per enemy for the first enemy hit, and then 50% additional. You can get almost 25k shield from these two abilities depending on what content you're playing. If you're in a dungeon or a trial and there's a lot of trash that you're hitting, you're going to constantly be proccing these higher shields, which is going to give you greater survivability. Alright, next up we have Flames of Oblivion. Flames of Oblivion, we have it on both bars for one reason. One, when you activate it, it launches a fireball at 2 enemies every 5 seconds, dealing X amount of flame damage. And then while slotted, you get Major Prophecy and Major Savagery, which increases both spell and weapon critical by 10%. And this ability scales off your highest effect offensive stat. So this will actually scale off your max magicka and spell damage. Even though your stamina is higher, because of your weapon, your spell damage actually going higher than your weapon damage, it actually is affected by your magic based. So it actually does a lot more damage than what it looks. Next up, we have Standard of Might. This is a great ultimate ability. You call down a flame battle standard, dealing flame damage every second for 20 seconds, and then enemies applying Major Defile to them, reducing their healing received and health recovered by 30%. Standing in the area increases your damage and reduces your damage taken by 15%. And an ally can activate the standard's Synergy Shackle, which deals flame damage to enemies in the area and immobilizes them for 5 seconds. This is a great ability because you're going to be up close. You're going to get that increased 15% damage and 15% reduced damage. So you're actually going to get more damage reduction than a lot of other people. Moving on to the back bar, we have our first ability here, which is Engulfing Flames. And this is a great ability because it does damage up front and damage over time. Affected enemies take more damage from flame damage attacks based on your offensive stats, with a maximum of 10% bonus damage. So ours is 7% right now because of our offensive stats, which is still pretty good. So they're going to be taking an extra 7% damage because of this Engulfing Flames. And Engulfing Flames does hit multiple targets, so you can get this applied to multiple enemies. Next, we have Eruption. Now this one's summoning a Scorching Cloud at the target location, reducing enemy movement speed by 70% and dealing flame damage every second. Deals X amount of flame damage right at the cast of it. So when you cast this ability, and you can cast this ability, from a distance and then move in on the target, which is another really good factor. And it does do a decent amount. As you can see, it's doing about 924 there, which 924 damage adds up really fast, especially if you're doing it every second. So, along with the monster set, you have doing damage as well. So, next, we have Volatile Armor. Now, Volatile Armor, this is not the main skill I would suggest using here. If you're in a group, I would suggest Burning Talons. This is a great flame damage ability, and it does damage over 4 seconds and immobilizes enemies. And then allies can use the Ignite Synergy, dealing magic damage to all enemies held within. So this is a really good ability you can use, and you can also use the Ardent Flame ability, Unrelenting Grip, as a way to pull enemies to you, and if they can't be pulled, it will restore 100% of the magicka cost, but it also deals flame damage. Remember, this build's all about flame damage. Another ability you can use, which is really good, is Obsidian Shard. It's a nice flame damage ability with a nice heal. So this is really, really good for that, kind of like adding that extra. So Our next ability we have is Molten Armaments, and this is where the heavy attacks come into play, guys. So first off, when you activate this, this increases your group's brutality and sorcery. Grants some major brutality, major sorcery, increasing weapon and spell damage by 20% for 36 seconds. And your own damage with heavy attacks is increased by 50% while active. So what you're going to want to do is when you have this activated and you're doing your rotation, what I find works really well is applying Flame Lash, Brawler, this, and then heavy attacking, and then Flames of Oblivion, heavy attacking, and then that again, and then go into a whip, switch bars, and then do the engulfing flames. And then while I'm on the back bar, I'm going to be mostly just light attacking, as you can see. And then I'll be doing a lot more heavy attacking on the front bar. Another thing you can use is a weapon or magic damage enchant, so you can get magic resource back when you're doing your heavy attacks and stuff. And that works out as well. Alright, so now that I've shown you guys that, let's go ahead and talk about the last two skills. So, of course, we have our Flames of Oblivion here as well for that increased weapon and spell damage. You're not going to be activating this one as often. You're going to be focusing on the one on the front bar more than this one. This is just here to give you that extra spell and weapon damage. Last but not least, we have Magma Shell. Now, this is a great group ability. So, this one inflicts damage to the enemy, 3% of your max health, dealing X amount of flame damage to nearby enemies for 12 seconds, and then while activated, nearby allies gain a damage shield for 116% of their max health for 10 seconds. So this is actually the second longest running shield ultimate in the game. The other one being Barrier in the Alliance War skills. So this works out really well in a group area because you can apply this to yourself, doing this AoE burning damage, but also helping your allies stay alive a little bit better by giving them this shield that's for 116% of their health for 10 seconds. It takes a while to get rid of it, and it's a kind of a cheap ultimate. 200 isn't too bad. This one is 250, so it can be a little rough. Now remember, you also get other your class passives, and you want to max out all of them so you get all the benefits from the different passives here. Now moving on to other passives. Weapon, two-handed. We are primarily a two-handed wielder, so we want to unlock the two-handed abilities that we can use in other environments like Wrecking Blow or Stampede or Reverse Slice, Onslaught. Those abilities I like to use in PvP, along with Rally works out really well as a self-heal, along with some of the abilities I already have unlocked. Moving on to the armor, we are light armor build, so you want to make sure you max out all your light armor, and you want to get the active ability and morph it into Dampen Magicka. Next, we have medium armor passives, our heavy armor passives, and then moving on to world skills. Soul Magic, definitely get the passives here, and you can take the ultimate and active abilities if you want some extra abilities to help you get resources back and help you with damage. They're really good for those. On to the guild skills. Fighters Guild, I do unlock these. I do unlock Flawless Dawnbreaker. It's a really great one for AoE damage, trash clears, that kind of stuff. If you want to add another ability that's based off of physical damage more than Magicka. And it does do damage up front and damage over time. It's not as powerful as some of the other abilities you have, but it still works out. Next, we have Silver Shards unlocked. Ring of Preservation, Evil Hunter, and the Barbed Trap. Now remember, some of these abilities are just unlocked for when you want to solo play and just run around doing stuff. Some of it's here if you want to play in a group and you want to add some extra protection to them or extra healing. Or if you want to add a minor force to yourself, there's a way to do that. And then the Mages Guild, we have all these unlocked here as well. Ultimate ability, Shooting Star. This deals flame damage, and it's really powerful. Then we have Inner Light. We have this for the major prophecy. Instead of using something like, say, Flames of Oblivion, we could use Inner Light and would also boost our max Magicka. You have Structured Entropy, Scalding Ruin, and Balance. Different abilities for different situations. Sigic Order, we also have Temporal Guard, Time Freeze, Elemental Weapon, Channeled Acceleration, Symbiosis, and Deep Thoughts unlocked, along with all the passives. Remember to get those for every skill line that you're using abilities from. And then last but not least, we have our Undaunted stuff. And we do have Undaunted abilities unlocked here. And again, you can switch them out if you need them. Some of these will work out better than others. Like, I like to use Spike Bone Shield sometimes over Dampened Magic, even though Dampened Magic has a bigger shield. But this has a synergy applying to it, so other people can activate off of it. It works out really well. And it costs me stamina instead of magicka. So that's another reason why that's another good ability. And then onto Alliance War, we have assault skills like Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, and Razor Caltrops. Don't really need Razor Caltrops because it just does Major Fracture for 4 seconds, and it does do physical damage and movement speed reduction, but it's not needed when you have the set one of the sets we're using. I just unlock it because it's a habit. Support skills, Replenishing Barrier, another great damage shield absorber. We have Efficient Purge for those situations where we need to remove negative effects from us or our allies. We have Stalwart Guard here if we want to give somebody Minor Force and ourself Minor Force. By linking us together, it's another great ability you can use in those group situations where you might be having some struggling difficulties with damage output or anything like that. And then moving on to racials. Being a Dark Elf, like I said, you get that max Magicka stamina almost by 2k. You get resist fire, flame resistance, and burning status effect you're immune to. Then you have Ruination, which increases weapon and spell damage by 258. And then into our crafting, Alchemy, medicinal use, really good for playing in groups or even by yourself because it makes your potions effects last 30% longer. And then Provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur. Both of these will make your food and drinks last 20 minutes longer. So, and that's our skills. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our CP. So going over CP here, and our CP is set up for hybrid play, but only in the blue tree and the green tree. In the rest of it, it's really set up more focused on like the red tree, so focused more on light armor play and shields. The green tree is set up for more resource management and melee stuff with stamina. We'll see here in a second. So let's go ahead and start here in the red tree. We have 56 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. Moving on over here, we have 38 in the light armor focus. This increases your physical resistance by 3250. And this is actually a pretty decent amount of extra light armor or physical resistance, which does keep you alive really well. Thick Skin reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. Then we have 43 in a Hardy and Elemental Defender, which reduce Flame, Frost, Shock, magic damage, physical, poison, disease damage by 10%. And these do stack with the Thick Skin and the Ironclad, so just letting you know. Moving on over here, we have 40 in the Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. Now, this does apply to Dampen Magic and the amount of shield strength you have based on your max health. But it's easy to max out. So this is actually going over what is needed to make it maximize it. But we also have this here for our Brawler shield and our Spiked Bone shield. Next up, we have Quick Recovery. This increases your healing received by 5%. Which helps out in the long run. And then moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 16%. We have 16 in the Sprinter and 16 in the Bashing Focus. Both of these giving you a 10% reduced cost in Sprint and Bashing. Moving on, we have 43 in a Mooncalf. This increases your stam recovery by 10%. It's not really necessary, but it helps out in the long run. And you'll see why when you see it, when you actually play it. And depending on what abilities you're using and things like that, because there is times where you're going to be focusing a lot on using more stamina-based abilities or a mix of stamina and magic abilities, and it's gonna really play on that really well. Next, we have magic 75 in Arcanus. This increases mag recovery by 14%, and it is a flat 14%. A lot of people say, oh, it's 13.99%, so it's actually 13%. It's actually a flat 14%. I have done the testing of this thoroughly in so many different ways, and it is 14% exactly. Alright, moving on. We have 40 in the tumbling, which reduces your dodge roll cost by 16%. And then we have 40 in the shadow ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Remember, you do still block and dodge roll no matter what you're playing. So having this 16% reduced cost does save you the stamina in the long run. Alright, moving on to the blue tree where we have it hybridized. So starting with the first, we have Blessed. This increases healing done by 10%, and this is primarily for like if you're using Echoing Vigor or you're using your own self-heal to give you a better way of keeping your health full. Next, we have 23 in Elfborn. This increases your critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. Then we have 43 in Elemental Expert. This increases Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. Moving on to the middle tree, if you're playing with Staff instead of Sword, put 35 in the Staff. And then 40 in the Mastered Arms. But if you're playing the two-handed or even dual wield, 35 in the weapon, Physical Weapon Expert is amazing. Because this is going to increase your light and heavy attacks with two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, and dual wield and bow weapons by 20%. And that does apply to that 50% increase you get from your heavy attacks. So this actually helps improve that heavy attack damage that you're going to be doing with the two-handed. Now remember, two-handed heavy attacks hit multiple targets. They are a cleave attack. So this really helps with that. Next up, you have 40 in the Mastered Arms. This increases your direct damage done by 16%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 in the Mighty, increasing physical poison disease damage by 10%. 23 in the Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then we have 20 in the Thaumaturge. Now this just increases your damage over time by 9%. If you wanted to increase this more, what you could do is pull the 43 out of Blessed, put this up to 40, and then you could put the rest into Precise Strikes and Elfborn to give you more critical damage output. But the way this build works, it works out really well, and I will show you guys what I mean by that right now, because we're going to go ahead and take this over to a dungeon. Now, a lot of times people will say, why are you going to test this out in a dungeon? It's not really meant for solo play, but that's just it. This build isn't just made for group play. It can be played as solo play. It can be played as a one-bar build. There's so many different things you can do with one build that a lot of people don't know. So, to play this build solo, you just got to change one skill. And that's the skill that gives you higher survivability. And if you need it, extra health or extra healing. So this will give you extra survivability. So let's go ahead and change out our one ability, if we haven't, which we don't need to, which is Volatile Armor. This gives you physical and spell resist by 5,280 for 20 seconds. It also sprays out magic, the spikes that do magic AoE damage, and then while active, the armor returns magic damage back to the enemies from any direct damage you take. So it's going to help you out in the long run. Alright, so as we get further into the dungeon, I'm only going to play up to the first boss encounter to show you guys how the build works. But once we get started, you guys will see what I mean. So Potion, Flames of Oblivion, you want your buffs going all right away, and your AoEs. This is the big thing here, is your AoEs. Because you're going to be using a lot of abilities to basically just keep dishing out AoE damage, heavy attacking, things like that. Everything's dead already. Can't believe it. So back bar again, we're going to go ahead and pop our Flames of Oblivion. Now, some people might struggle with this kind of build. If you are struggling, I would suggest putting another recovery into it somehow, or more into the recovery, so it gives you that greater, again, survivability. So we're going to go ahead and do this again. Now, I might die pretty quickly against this boss, because I haven't really had time to, like I said, I've had time to fine-tune it, but I've never really tried taking on this dungeon with this build before, so... Oops, and I hit the wrong key. Oh, potion. Oh, it's puking on me. Now I'm going to stop here in a second. I'm going to let it get down to about 70% almost health. But as you can see, it's actually holding up pretty well. Like I said, you're going to be doing a lot of heavy attacking with the two-handed in solo play more than you will be using some of the magic abilities. But I'm going to go ahead and let it kill me now. But as you can see, it does work out really well for what it does. It does everything I said it does. It has good survivability, it has good damage output, great AoE damage output, which is what you're really looking at with this build. It's more about how much can I apply to multiple targets and what can I do to help not only my own damage potential, but my groups as well. So having that ability to apply major fracture to multiple targets, plus all that burning damage and all that fire damage, and everything else on top of it, and then you have all these other tools that you can use to help aid and support your allies if you need them. So that's the really cool thing about this build, is it works out really well in just group dynamic play. Now a lot of people are going to ask, what is the costume and the color scheme and all that. So the outfit I'm wearing is actually called the Dremora set. I'm wearing full Dremora, weapons, armor, you name it. And then on the colors, I'm actually using the Blood Pact Red in the second slot. In the first slot, I'm using the Cold Harbor Ash, and then in the final slot, I'm actually using the blood. I think it's called the Bloodroot Forge Fire or Blood Flame Fire or something like that. I can see if I can pull it up here. I doubt I can. Yes, we can. So it's Fire Drake's Flame, that's it. And then we're using the Blood Pact and the Cold Harbor Ash Black. So this is what it looks like fully decked out. It's pretty cool. And that is it. So why is my character just like invisible now? Well, who knows? Just the game, I guess. It's been kind of buggy lately. On live and on PTS, they did a patch today, which hopefully will help. But we'll have to see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. I hope you guys like the Firebrand. It's actually something I really enjoy playing because it's just so interesting to be able to play a melee type Magicka build, and it works. So it's really good for that. Now, again, if you guys are interested in playing it, here's a build for it. If there's anything about the build you want to change or alter, you have freedom to do that. These builds are not set in stone. They are very flexible to be done. Have other things done to them. Like I said, you can even play this with a full-on Magicka build. You can put, you know, like Scathing Mage with Burning Spell Weave and 2 Fire Staves, and this thing actually will blow your mind with the amount of DPS it can do. And if you switch out Grothar for Vulcan Scoria, it's another thing you can do. There is a lot. So, but yeah, really good build for any kind of person who wants to play more of a hybrid build. So. And that is it for this video, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me or even more builds, you can hit that subscribe button. But when you do, make sure you click on that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.